I will start off with a statement on Cameroon. The Secretary General has taken note of the announcement of the results of the presidential elections held in Cameroon on October 12th. He is deeply concerned by the post-electoral violence and the reports of excessive use of force that we've seen. He deplores the loss of life and injuries among both protesters and security forces and extends his condolences to the families of the victims. He calls for a thorough and impartial investigation into these.
Tonight, a nation trembles. Candles blown out, drums of power beating louder, and the world watching as Cameroon faces a moment that could change its future. A 92-year-old president proclaims victory, streets fill with smoke and anger, and the United Nations breaks its long routine of quiet diplomacy to call for answers. This is not a whisper, it is a roar. And Africa is listening. Good evening. Welcome to Voice of Africa, where we treat every headline as a living story, a story that shapes tomorrow. Tonight we turn our eyes to Cameroon, a Central African country once touted for stability, now caught in a storm.
Hundreds of protesters hit the streets in parts of Cameroon to oppose Biya's victory.
On October 12th, Cameroonians went to the polls. The official tally later declared President Paul Biya the winner, extending a rule that stretches over 4 decades. But the calm of a declared victory has been shattered by protests, grief, and a rare public nudge from the United Nations asking for a full, impartial look into what happened. The UN Secretary General, through his spokesman, made a short but heavy statement. He noted the announced results, expressed deep worry over the post-election violence and reports of excessive force, deplored lives lost and injuries on all sides, and urged a thorough, impartial inquiry. That diplomatic phrasing may sound measured, but its implications are powerful. For the first time in recent memory, the UN did not simply congratulate a sitting president of Cameroon after an election. Instead, it demanded that the facts be clarified and justice pursued. Why does that matter? Because words from institutions like the UN change the tenor of global conversation. They shift the moment from domestic dispute to international concern. They tell the world that this is no longer just internal politics. It is a question of human lives, of democratic credibility, and of a nation's future. The streets tell the human story. From Douala to Yaoundé, from Garoua to regional towns, people poured out, angry and exhausted. Many told reporters they felt robbed, not only of a ballot, but of years of unfulfilled promises. "We have suffered 43 years, a woman said. Our children are unemployed. Food is expensive. Healthcare is a luxury. We are tired." A young man, standing amid smoke and the sting of tear gas, shouted that the youth had come to reclaim votes they believe were stolen. These are not abstract slogans. They are the voices of citizens who see their daily struggle reflected in the ballot box. Official results gave Paul Biya roughly 53.6% of the vote, with his principal opponent Issa Chiroma Bakari trailing on paper. But opposition leaders and independent observers say the picture on the ground looked different. That in many places Issa Chiroma was leading or that tallies were inconsistent. The opposition insists it won and rejected the official count. Tensions boiled over. Clashes with security forces followed. At least 4 civilians have been reported dead, with many more injured and hundreds detained. Families are grieving in towns where they expected celebration, not funerals. Human rights groups and international partners have raised alarms. Organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have documented reports of disproportionate force used against demonstrators, accounts of tear gas fired into crowds, the use of live rounds in some areas, and armored vehicles moving through city streets. The European Union also issued a statement expressing concern about repression and the deadly use of ammunition during demonstrations. These international voices join the UN in urging restraint and insisting that anyone detained must be treated according to the law. The Cameroonian government has responded by blaming criminal elements for the unrest and by accusing opposition figures of inciting disorder. Ministers have warned that spreading false information on social media could lead to prosecution. They have also framed the opposition's actions as part of a plan to destabilize the country. Such rhetoric is familiar in moments of political crisis. And while the government insists the situation is under control, images and testimonies from the ground paint a different picture. Closed shops, empty markets, parents afraid to send children to school, and communities on edge. There is a human side to this diplomacy, too. When the UN calls for a thorough and impartial investigation, it is asking for more than paperwork. It is asking for witnesses to be heard, for evidence to be gathered, and for families who lost loved ones to be able to know what really happened. It is a call that could mean sending observers, requesting access to police records and hospital logs, and working with regional bodies to ensure transparency. For many Cameroonians, such an investigation would be a long overdue step toward accountability. This moment in Cameroon sits within a wider African conversation about leadership, legitimacy, and generational change. The continent is young. A large share of Africans are under 30, and the median age in many countries hovers around the late teens and early 20s. Yet many of the men and women who lead African states today rose to power decades ago, in an era before the internet, before mobile phones, before the global flows of information that now connect a 19-year-old in Douala to a student in Lagos or a worker in London. Those generational tensions are visible in the streets. A protester told our team, "We respect our elders, but we want our future back." That phrase is not a rejection of age. It is a plea for opportunity, dignity, and a chance to shape a destiny that belongs to them. For years, some leaders have defended their long tenures by pointing to stability and continuity. To their supporters, longevity signals experience and protection from chaos. To critics, however, it is proof that institutions have been hollowed out around personalities rather than strengthened around principles. Cameroon also faces complex security challenges, an Islamist insurgency in parts of the north, separatist tensions in the Anglophone regions, and economic strains across urban and rural areas. Instability in Cameroon would not stay confined to its borders. Regional spillover is a real risk, affecting Nigeria, Chad, and the Central African Republic, among others. That makes the question of how to resolve this crisis not just a Cameroonian priority, but a regional one. Throughout Africa, recent years have shown that when citizens are denied peaceful, credible channels for change, frustration can boil over into coups, unrest, or long cycles of repression and resistance. The UN's intervention, at least in language, is meant to prevent that spiral. It is meant to insist on due process, that arrests are lawful, that people are not subject to torture, and that political disputes are settled according to legal, not violent means. There are proverbs that help us understand what is at stake. One old African saying goes, "The tree that refuses to bend will break. Leadership that refuses to adapt risks collapse." Another image, "Truth is like a river. You may dam it for a while, but eventually it finds a way and continues to flow." In the digital age, with videos, social media, and international scrutiny, controlling the narrative is far more difficult than in years past. So what comes next? Diplomatically, much depends on whether the Cameroonian authorities allow an independent probe and whether regional and global partners press for access to facts. An investigation that is credible could restore confidence, identify abuses, and hold perpetrators accountable. Refusal to cooperate or attempts to limit scrutiny would only deepen suspicion and isolation. For the people on the ground, the immediate priority is safety and justice. Families who lost loved ones deserve answers. Those detained deserve fair legal treatment. Citizens deserve to know that their votes matter and that there are mechanisms to settle disputes fairly. For a country that has long grappled with divisions and grievances, addressing these issues transparently could be a moment of healing, or an opportunity missed. As journalists and as citizens of this continent, we must keep watching, asking the hard questions, and holding power to account. The UN's intervention signals that the world will not look away. Whether that pressure leads to accountability or simply to more posturing remains to be seen. What is clear is this: Cameroon has reached a turning point. How leaders choose to respond will shape the lives of millions for decades to come. Before we close tonight, remember this: power that ignores people's pain eventually faces a reckoning, and people who demand dignity are not making noise for noise's sake. They are insisting on a future worth living for. Thank you for joining Voice of Africa. If you value reporting that centers African voices and seeks the truth, like, share, and subscribe so more people can see this story. Stay informed, stay engaged, and we will bring you more updates as they unfold. Good night.